friends, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today, so thanks for watching. Man, I sure do appreciate it. 2 best case, worst case scenario videos coming up for you guys today, and I'm gonna take a suggestion that I got from a few people yesterday. I'm gonna do 2 teams again today, but I'm gonna split it into 2 videos. So I'll upload one, and then the second one will be uploaded shortly after that. This will make the videos shorter to watch for you guys, and it'll enable you to just watch one or the other if that's what you want to do. So coming up today is going to be Vandy, and then I'm going to do Kentucky. So if you clicked on this and it's the Vandy video, the Kentucky video will be uploaded right after this. And if you clicked on this because it's the Kentucky video and you're curious about my thoughts on Vandy, you can click back one video. It was uploaded just a few minutes ago. All right, let's get started with Vanderbilt. All right, last season, 2018, Vanderbilt had a very Vanderbilt-y type of season, right? It's what you've come to expect under head coach Derek Mason. They weren't nearly as bad as what Vanderbilt has been in a lot of years past, and Derek Mason yet to get Vanderbilt really to the point where James Franklin had them several seasons ago. So last year, Vanderbilt goes 6-6 in the regular season, so 500, made a bowl game for the second time in 3 years under Derek Mason, but they did lose the bowl game last year, finishing 6-7, 3-5 in the SEC. Their losses, of course, were to Notre Dame, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, Mizzou, and Baylor in the Texas Bowl. Notre Dame game was close. Vanderbilt had plenty of opportunities to win that game. Came down to the end. And Vandy sort of has a habit of doing this. I mean, they beat Kansas State out of the Big 12 a couple of years ago. They played Notre Dame close. When we get to looking at the schedule here in a few minutes, we'll try to find one of those out-of-conference games that maybe they have a shot at winning this year. We'll see. But you finished 6-7, taking a loss in the bowl game. I mentioned Mason made a bowl game 2 out of the last 3 years, lost both of them though. That's not enough to make Vanderbilt nervous though. They gave Derek Mason an extension right before spring practice, so he's going to be around for a while. It looks like he needs to have a winning season though. Now I know it's Vanderbilt, and you know, we talk about expectations a lot on this channel, right? And expectations are subjective to the program you're talking about, right? Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, Michigan even. None of these teams are giving an extension for a 6-6 regular season with a loss in the bowl game. But at Vanderbilt, lots of 3-4 win seasons. Going 6-6, not the worst case scenario for Vanderbilt. So they decided to keep Derek Mason around, giving him an extension. But he needs to have a winning record at some point. Going 6-6 is great. Making a bowl game, you got to win one. Finish 7-6. You go 7-5 in the regular season, even. Then if you lose your bowl game, you're still 500. But you need to have a winning season. You know, Mason's been there a while now. All his players are on the team now. You gotta, I mean, even Vanderbilt fans, I think, have the right to expect a winning season every 3 or 4 years. I don't feel like that's too much to ask. And I do think Derek Mason is a pretty good coach. He gets the most, I think, out of the talent available to Vanderbilt. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes in their recruiting and things like that. So it's not that I think he's a bad coach, but let's get a winning record. All right, what's going on with the roster at Vanderbilt? Of course, you lose Shermer. Your quarterback started there for a while. A very steady, reliable quarterback, right? Son of an NFL head coach. So a smart football guy there, Kyle Shermer. He's gone. You got to replace him. That's not going to be an easy task. You got this guy, Hassan, is that his name? He started at Syracuse, transferred to a junior college, then to Vanderbilt. I think he played in 4 or 5 games last year, something like that. He went 4 of 6 for 38 yards. So not much experience here. We'll see if he ends up being the guy. Maybe you go with somebody a little younger. We'll see. But the bottom line is whoever you go with at quarterback, in my opinion, is not going to give you what you got out of Shermer. He had a ton of experience, and he was one of the better quarterbacks to come out of Vanderbilt in the last 30 or 40 years. Not elite. The guy will never play in the NFL. That's not what I'm saying. but he was a serviceable quarterback for Vanderbilt. He didn't lose you very many games. He wasn't going to throw for 400 yards and win a shootout for you, but he was a pretty good quarterback. If you're a Vanderbilt fan, I think you would agree. You know what I'm talking about. So that's sort of the bad news on offense. You got to replace him. Good news is you get Keyshawn Vaughn back, and for my money, he's one of the most exciting players in the SEC. I talked a lot last year about Travion Williams over at Texas A&M, and of course, he left early for the NFL. Keyshawn Vaughn reminds me a lot of Travion Williams. I don't think Keyshawn Vaughn is quite as talented as a Trayvon Williams, but Keyshawn Vaughn is the type of player that can change a game on one play. He's a home run hitter. He can go 80 yards. He can catch it out of the backfield too. He's probably Vanderbilt's best player this year. You get him back, that's great news. Vanderbilt ran for 170 yards a game last year. That's good no matter who you are, but to be in the SEC and to have a Vanderbilt roster and running for 170 a game, now that wasn't all Keyshawn Vaughn. You had a couple of other guys that contributed too. Wakefield was one of them, but 170 a game rushing is good. And Vanderbilt, I think, with a young, inexperienced quarterback going into 2019, I think they're going to have to rely even more on the ground game. And if they can get back to this 170, maybe even increase it a little bit, then Vanderbilt, I think, would have a shot of repeating the success from last year in terms of getting close or above a winning record. Pinckney is back too, and this guy's one of the best tight ends in the SEC. I really like this guy, Pinckney. He would probably play at Georgia. I mean, he's good. He would play at probably any SEC school. There's some really good tight ends in the SEC, and I'm not sure that Pinckney is the best, but he's definitely good enough to play at any SEC school. This guy, Pinckney, is the real deal. Now on defense, bad news. You lose 4 of your top 5 tacklers from last year, and again, Vanderbilt is just not the type of team that is set up recruiting-wise to replace that type of production in one season. It's going to be very, very hard for Vanderbilt defensively this year. You had 13 interceptions last year, but you lose a couple of those guys too, so you got a couple of spots in the secondary you got to fill in. And I mentioned the recruiting, and here's the issue I mean, this isn't really a surprise, but when you sort of look at the numbers, it does sort of hit you in the face. Last in the SEC in recruiting last year. And again, this is not a trash talking video, and I understand that Vanderbilt is never really going to be able to attract the best of the best high school football talent for a variety of reasons. They don't have the history or the tradition that helps out at a lot of the other schools. Academic standards are a little tougher at Vandy, so there's some roadblocks there. But last in the SEC, and you signed 0 4-stars. You signed 20 or 21 players in the 2019 class. They were all 3-stars. 0 4-stars. Very tough, no matter how good of a coach you think Derek Mason is, and I think he's a pretty good coach. Talent is very important, and it's just hard to imagine any team being able to compete with the upper echelon of the SEC when they're unable to sign any 4-star athletes at all. Yes, there are 3-star athletes that go on to be All-Americans in college, get drafted, make Pro Bowls, Hall of Fame, all that. I get it. But when it comes to recruiting and the star ratings, because you always hear, oh, star ratings don't matter because DeAndre Baker was a 3-star. That's true. It's the law of percentages, okay? Are there going to be some 5-stars who don't pan out? Yes. Are there going to be some 3-stars who end up elite? Yes. A team full of 5-stars is going to beat a team full of 3-stars almost every single time. It's percentages. So it's just going to be very hard for Vandy to compete here. No 4-stars. I mean, Georgia signed 5 5-stars in 2019. Vanderbilt 0 4-stars. So huge talent gap between Vandy and the upper echelon of the SEC. But let's put the schedule up on the screen here. We'll go through it, and we'll see what sort of chance Vanderbilt has this year to try to get back to sort of that magic 6-win number of bowl eligibility, which in my mind should be the goal for Vanderbilt every single year at this point in their program. I think Vanderbilt is past the days of sort of just closing their eyes and expecting a 3 or 4 win season. Not that that couldn't happen, but given the records and sort of what's gone on at Vanderbilt over the last 8, 9, 10 years, I think Vanderbilt fans should set an expectation of bowl game or bust. Let's look at the schedule and see if there's a way they can possibly get there. Doesn't start out easy for you. You're at home, but you got to play Georgia. No matter what poll you look at, some idiot like me with a poll, any preseason polls you want to look at, whatever you think about Georgia, they're going to be a top 5 team to open up the season. This is not going to be an easy game for you. Yes, you beat Georgia in Kirby Smart's first year back in 2016. Ask yourself this, though. Do you think Georgia today is anywhere near what they were when you played them in 2016? The answer is obviously no. You'll be a huge underdog in this game. Now, this is best case, worst case. Not my job to pick wins and losses for every single game here. But for the purposes of this video, I mean, that definitely goes in the possible loss category, okay? You'll be a huge underdog. On the road at Purdue. Now, I think this is a critical game for Vandy here. Purdue is a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team, right? They're not, I know they housed Ohio State last year, and we love to make fun of Ohio State about that, but, they're no Ohio State. They're not Michigan. They're not Penn State. They're not Wisconsin. I would actually put them more around than Nebraska. I think Nebraska's going to be pretty good this year. That's besides the point. But anyway, I mentioned earlier, you've done a good job over the last couple of years in some of these out-of-conference games, beating a Big 12 team, really outplaying Notre Dame last year, and really you should have won that game. If you can repeat that here at Purdue, I think that's a huge step forward this season for Vanderbilt in terms of having a winning record, which I think should be a goal, and making a bowl game, right? Purdue will probably be favored. You got to play them there. But like I said, you've played well in some of these games over the last few years. If you can find a way to pull that off, I think that's a huge, huge win for you. Bye week, that's early in the season for a bye week. Of course, everybody gets 2 bye weeks this year because of the calendar. It's not a change in college football. Next year, be back to 1 bye week. It's just to get the games to start at the end of August like they want to and end with the conference championship games the first weekend in December. It required 2 bye weeks this year. So you get your first one after your first 2 games. Another brutal game coming out of your bye week at home against LSU. Your first 2 home games of the year against Georgia and LSU. 2 top 10 teams, 1 top 5 team. It's hard to imagine Vandy winning either of those games, but like I said, this is best case, worst case. You got to consider that possibility as a loss there. Then another non-con game in IU. That's a game you have to win. Absolutely have to win. It's possible you're sitting at 0-3 heading into that game. You have got to win that game. There's no way you can lose this game and make a bowl, in my opinion. You've got to win that game. On the road at Ole Miss, another game I think Vandy can win. I've been down on Ole Miss the last few years, and the reason is really simple. It's no hate or anything for Ole Miss. When a team goes on probation and gets bowl bans and loses scholarships, it's not just the overall talent level and things like that suffer at the school. It's the attitude and the mentality. Now, the kids and the coaches that are at Ole Miss now, it's not their fault what happened while Hugh Freeze was there. And of course, they come out and they say all the right things. We're going to play for ourselves, and we're playing for our school, and we're playing for pride. And I understand that, and I believe that. But these are 18 to 22-year-old kids and young adults here. And it's just, anyway, we've seen this the last couple of years. Ole Miss was actually better last year than I thought they would be, but you have to play them there. I think that's a game Vandy can win. And again, you almost have to win this one here. Your other game against the West being LSU is almost no shot. You almost have to win this Ole Miss game. All right, you come back home for another non-con game against UNLV. You can put this in the same category as the NIU game. You've got to win this game, or you can forget about making a bowl. You should be favored in that game, too. Missouri at home. I'm looking forward to doing a Missouri video, best case, worst case, and that will probably come tomorrow or the next day. But Kelly Bryant, how's he going to work out there? You get him at home. I think Missouri is a better team right now than Vandy, but we'll see. And then you have your second bye week. Come out of that, you got 2 tough road games at South Carolina, at Florida. you hung close with Florida last year. You outplayed them in the first half. You took a lead into halftime, and then they sort of took over in the second half. Vaughn got injured in that game. He was absolutely dominant the first half of that game. Florida had no answer for him, Keyshawn Vaughn. He got hurt a little, slowed him down in the second half. Florida came back and won. South Carolina, I'm not very high on them this year. They still have Jake Bentley. This guy hadn't gotten any better since the day he enrolled. They lose Deebo Samuel. They haven't had a running game since Muschamp got there. I have questions about them on both lines of scrimmage. They're young in the secondary. I think you have a possibility to beat South Carolina. Now, that is one of the tougher places to play in the SEC, generally speaking. So that'll be a tough game, but I think it's one you have a possibility to win. I mean, I would give you way more of a shot, obviously, to win at South Carolina than I would at Florida, but we'll see. After that, you play Kentucky. Kentucky, another tough team, and again, a preview on that video. If you're watching this video, the Kentucky video is either already out or will be out very, very soon, as in 30 minutes soon. Kentucky's an interesting team. I don't want to spoil the Kentucky video, but I've been low on Kentucky all offseason with the whole, well, you're not replacing Josh Allen and Benny Snell, best team you had since the 70s. Kentucky might still be a pretty good team. This is going to be a tough game for you. Get them at home, but right now I would lean Kentucky in that one. ETSU, you have to win that. Listen, ETSU, NIU, and UNLV, you have to go 3-0 there or you're not making a bowl game, okay? And then, of course, final game of the season at Tennessee. You should win that game without a problem. You've completely owned them over the last decade. What are you, 6-4, 7-3, something like that against them in the last 10 years. You beat them the last 3 years in a row, and the games haven't even really been close. This is the last game of the year, which works out great for Vandy because Tennessee has done give up on the season about 3 or 4 weeks before this game is played every year. But you got to play them there. And Pruitt has to win this game. This is a must-win game for Tennessee. I don't care if Tennessee is 0-11 when they go into this game or if they're 10-1. They have to win. Tennessee has got to get back to the point where they're beating Vandy. So this could be an interesting game. You could see a situation similar to last year where both teams are hovering around the 5-6 win mark when this game comes around and they need it to make a bowl game. We'll see. It's almost like a play-in for a bowl game. We'll see, but it's on the road at Tennessee. All right, so what's the best case and worst case scenario for Vandy in 2019? I'm going to tell you right off the jump, I think there's 3 games that you have virtually no shot to win. That's Georgia, LSU, and Florida. So I sort of start there. I don't see any way you lose less than that. And then you got some other tough games, some of them on the road, at South Carolina, at Purdue, at Tennessee. I think you luck out by getting Kentucky and Mizzou at home. I think those are games that sort of maybe could go either way. Best case scenario, I think, for Vandy, it's going to be a problem replacing Shermer. You're lucky to have Vaughn back. Your defense has a lot of question marks. I don't see a way you do any better than 7-5. And if you go 7-5, you would have to say that's a successful season. And most Vandy fans, I think, would be ecstatic if they went 7-5. I'm going to be a little generous here on the worst case end because I'm not going to lie. I considered the possibility of Vandy going 2-10 or 3-9 here, especially if you lose one of those 3 cupcake non-con games, NIU, UNLV, or ETSU. I'm going to give Vandy the benefit of the doubt, though, that they've learned to win enough to the point where those games should not be an issue. And I just don't think you'll go winless in the SEC. So I'm banking on you at least beating those 3 terrible non-con teams, Purdue, forget Purdue, NIU, UNLV, ETSU. I'm banking on you winning at least those 3. And then I don't think you'll go winless in the SEC. So worst case scenario would be at least 1 SEC win. So worst case, 4-8. So I think you get 7-5 on the top end, 4-8 on the low end. All right, that's it. I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget, Kentucky video will be out right after this one. You guys have a great morning.
I'm about to drop you like drop